Paul always dropped into my life like a badly fixed chandelier, sudden, painful, and with consequences that lasted for days. My husband's brother, Paul, never warned us before showing up. He'd just arrive in town, bang on our door, and ruin any plans I had made. This time was no different. What annoyed me most was that my husband, Leo, didn't mind at all. Our son, Max, was always thrilled by his uncle's visits, mostly because Paul came bearing gifts, some toy or treat. I was the only one who didn't enjoy these surprise appearances. But since they weren't frequent, I tried to stay civil and play the good hostess. The early summer weather had been unpredictable. Scorching sun one day, then dark clouds and downpours the next. On one particularly hot afternoon, Paul and Leo were lounging on the balcony with Kvass when Leo had a sudden flash of inspiration. "Why are we sitting indoors? Let's go to the river. Remember how we used to bike to Willowbend as kids?" "Do people still swim there?" Paul asked. "Let's find out," Leo replied, jumping up from his stool and heading into the room. I overheard them, and I wasn't thrilled at the idea of sweating through some nostalgic trip to the middle of nowhere. Just as I was about to protest, Leo burst in with excitement. "We're going, right now, an overnight trip to the outdoors." I barely opened my mouth to object before I noticed the sparkle in his eyes. I glanced at Max, who was squirming in his chair with headphones on. Taking a deep breath, I forced a smile. "Fine, but give me a few minutes to pack." I shoved myself into an old swimsuit, hastily threw random things into bags, and headed downstairs. "Are we bringing a market vendor or what?" Paul sneered, eyeing my pile of bags. Leo scratched his head, unsure how to fit the tents. "Guess we'll have to sleep wrapped in your bags," he joked. "Fine by me. Without my bags, you'll be eating from your hands and drinking from puddles," I shot back. Max, meanwhile, protested. "I don't want to go. You go, I'll stay home and play." "You can't stay home alone for a full day," I tried to reason. "Then you stay too," he yelled. Fed up with the back and forth, Paul and Leo simply picked Max up and put him in the car. He sulked the whole way, glued to his phone. It took us about 2 hours. Trees and bushes gave way to fields and the occasional tiny village. Sun blazed through the windows, and sweat trickled down my neck. The men argued the entire drive, debating which road to take. We took a few wrong turns, but eventually arrived. "There's no signal here," Max grumbled. "Nothing loads. My game doesn't work. I want to go home." I stepped out and looked around. Heavy willows drooped over the water. The air smelled of algae and rot. The ground was a muddy mix of sand and gunk. From the green river poked thick reeds, and trash floated on the surface strips of plastic, bits of foam. "Are we even in the right place?" I asked. "Of course," Leo replied. "A little wild, maybe, but the vibe's right. Just breathe in that fresh air." I did, and almost gagged. "Yeah, I can smell whatever died here too." They started unpacking, arguing over who should hold what as they struggled with the tents. One of the tents was missing parts and sagged dramatically to one side. Paul stuck a branch in to fix it, but it didn't help. Then Leo couldn't find his pocket knife and began dumping bags onto the ground. "What are you doing?" I snapped, but it was too late. He'd poured our entire stash of cold cuts into the sand. "No big deal," he said. "We'll rinse it in the river and make sandwiches." I nearly gagged and had to walk away. Following an overgrown path, I found an old, crumbling dock. A man sat there fishing with a tiny rod. "Is there even fish in here?" I asked. "Not really," he said, nodding at his empty bucket. "But it's quiet. Back home, I've got a wife, 3 kids, and a mother-in-law. Even if I catch nothing, at least I get peace and quiet." He smiled blissfully, though his missing teeth made it slightly creepy. Still, I got it. I couldn't even remember the last time I did something alone. My son was always with me, and on weekends, my husband. Max would start school this year. Maybe then I'd get a little time for myself. When I returned, the guys were collecting sticks for the fire. They'd even managed to pull Max out of the car. He was helping, gathering small twigs. Leo showed him how to light a fire, and Max proudly flicked the lighter, thrilled when sparks caught. Things were going okay, but I couldn't shake the discomfort. Nature always made me uneasy. Unlike a city park with water fountains and bathrooms, this place felt truly wild. If something happened here, help wouldn't arrive quickly, if at all. We sat around the fire. Max kicked a ball loudly into the trees. Suddenly, a cold drop landed on my skin. Then another. Rain started. The car was far, so we ducked into the tents. But the rain stopped almost immediately. As the sky darkened, I suggested we head back. "Back? We just got here." My husband, Leo, objected. "It was a drizzle. Look, the fire's still burning." "But what if it pours later?" I insisted. "Then we'll already be wet, no big deal." Paul, his brother, laughed. The brothers stripped down and leapt into the murky, stinking river. "Watch this, fish boy," yelled Leo before vanishing underwater. "Children," I muttered, and turned toward Max, who was still sulking. Together we walked over to the fire, and I sat down on a log. After some time, the brothers came back, soaked, streaked with mud, and reeking of some strange chemicals. Paul pulled out a pack of sausages from his bag, skewered them on sticks, and sat by the fire. It had grown chilly. The fire warmed my hands and face, but I still felt goosebumps crawling up my back. Darkness had settled in fully, and the only light came from the flickering orange flames. Suddenly, we heard a splash behind us. "Maxime!" Leo called out. Alarmed, I jumped up, fearing our son had fallen into the river. The ball was floating nearby, and Max was standing safely on the bank. The 3 of us walked toward the water. "I think that's enough football for today," I said. Max nodded tiredly. After an active day, he looked exhausted. I glanced over at the dock, but the fisherman was gone. His things were still there, though. A jacket hung from the railing, an empty bucket lay nearby, and his fishing rod was drifting in the river. Maybe he had a few too many drinks and passed out in the bushes, Paul chuckled. I squinted toward the water. "Hey, isn't that him?" I pointed. "Look there, in the middle of the river. Something's sticking out. Looks like someone's standing waist deep in the water." "It's too dark to make anything out," Leo said. I figured maybe the fisherman had decided to take a dip. "Hey," I called, "could you toss us the ball? It's floating near you." No response. "Enough of this nonsense," Leo grumbled. "The ball's not going anywhere. I'll get it tomorrow morning." We returned to the fire. Half the sausages were already scorched and crunchy with soot. I toasted a slice of bread, and the smell made me realize I hadn't eaten all day. It had been one long, chaotic mess, thanks to 2 grown men chasing childhood memories. I looked at the tents and already imagined the back pain I'd have for the next week. I thought longingly of our warm bed at home. Trying to make peace with the situation, I toasted some bread for Max and handed him a banana. Just one night, I told myself. Then we'll be back home. I'll take a hot bath, throw on my soft robe, and make myself coffee. Just one uncomfortable night on a musty, sagging mattress, and then civilization. We sat on spread-out blankets around the fire, roasting sausages. That's when Paul decided to spook Max with a childhood ghost story. He told it theatrically, gesturing with wide arms, shifting his tone for effect. Long ago, he began, this forest was dense and the Willow Bend River deep and fast. A boy named Kenny went mushroom picking with his friends. He found a great spot, but didn't want them to steal his haul. So he secretly started collecting mushrooms. He kept going, finding more and more, until he realized he'd lost his friends. He tried calling out, but no one answered. So he walked toward where he thought the road was, but ended up by the river, lost. He turned around, hoping to find the others, but still nothing. Didn't he have a phone? Max interrupted, unimpressed. No one had phones back then, Paul replied. Now listen. He wandered until nightfall, hungry, thirsty, only mushrooms in his bucket. Then the wind picked up. He got scared. Eventually, he found an abandoned cabin. Of course he did, Max muttered. Hey, don't be a smart aleck, Paul scolded. Anyway, the cabin was dusty. There was an old mattress inside. The boy curled up on it, crying. Suddenly, he heard his name. Kenny. Where are you, Kenny? It sounded like one of his friends. He ran to the door and shouted, I'm here. But then the voice went silent. Two red eyes lit up in the dark and started moving toward the hut, closer and closer. He slammed the door shut and leaned against it, but it was barely hanging on by a hinge. Then a terrible voice whispered from the woods, Kenny. Paul leaned in for effect. The next morning, people came looking. They found the old cabin, its door broken off. On the floor, just one child's shoe and a full bucket of mushrooms. No one ever saw the boy again. They say the forest took him. Max raised an eyebrow. That's not even scary. And if no one saw him, how do people know what happened? Paul looked annoyed. They pieced it together, tracks. Mushrooms cut here, grass trampled by the river. And the cabin, well, that part's obvious. But what about the red eyes and the creepy voice? Max asked. Maybe that part got added later, but everything else is true, Paul insisted. Dad, someone just walked behind you, Max said suddenly. Yeah, right, Paul laughed. No, seriously, I said, suddenly uneasy. I'd just seen a dark shape slip through the trees, quiet, fast, and gone in an instant. I thought I imagined it, but Max saw it too. Paul turned to look into the woods. Maybe the forest spirit didn't like us talking about him, he joked. More likely your fisherman is done with his swim, Leo added. Max shivered, whether from cold or nerves, I couldn't tell. We all fell quiet, chewing sausages, listening. But there was no sound, not even insects. Not a single bird had chirped all day. It was as if animals avoided this place altogether. Something splashed in the river. Then came the sound of trickling water. Another shadow moved at the edge of the forest. Is someone else out there? I whispered. This fisherman sure likes to pace, Leo said calmly. Or maybe he's not a fisherman at all. What if he's a psycho? Paul added, clearly enjoying himself. What if he camps near tourists, waits for nightfall, then sneaks up to the tents and slashes. Cut it out, I snapped, My nerves were shot. Why are you scaring the kid? Enough. Relax, Laura. You're safe with us, Paul said, giving his brother a firm pat on the back. Come on, Max. Bedtime, I said. You two play guards if you want. Max and I crawled into the tent. I tried to hide my fear. The silence out here was oppressive. Outside, the brothers were still laughing like idiots. Mama, what if what Uncle Paul said is true? Max whispered, wrapped tightly in his blanket. Go to sleep, sweetheart. Don't believe his nonsense. There's no forest spirit. I don't believe in that, Max replied. But serial killers are real. I watch true crime on YouTube. Enough. There are no maniacs here, I said firmly, though I was trying to convince myself too. Surprisingly, Max fell asleep quickly. At home, he'd stay up until 3 a.m. playing games in secret. This day had worn him out. I was almost ready to admit that maybe this trip had some merit, when suddenly Leo stuck his head into the tent. Laura, he whispered, is Max asleep? Yes. Keep your voice down. Come on, I want to show you something. Go away, I muttered. I'm serious. It's important. Carefully freeing myself from Max's arms, I slipped outside. Paul stood there too. Both brothers stared toward the river, their expressions tense. What's going on? I asked. Look closely, Paul said quietly, pointing toward the water. I squinted and my heart nearly stopped. In the moonlight, I could see human figures. Dozens of them, maybe more, all standing waist deep in the river. I see them. Who are they? I whispered. No idea, Leo replied. Something about the scene made me lose control of my voice. Pack up, we're leaving. Now. Paul raised a finger to his lips. They're in the woods too. I think they've surrounded us. I looked around. Nothing but shadows and the glow of the fire between the tents. But once my eyes adjusted to the dark, I could make out their shapes against the forest backdrop. The firelight glinted faintly off their wet, naked skin. A surge of terror shot through me. Then Paul added, "They're not human." What do you mean? I asked. They didn't look like animals. So what were they? Vampires? Ghosts? Something else entirely? We have no idea what they are, Leo said. They came out of the river, Paul pointed. Look closer. They're some kind of creatures. None of the figures moved. They just stood there like statues. Some looked like adult men, others like women, and some were the size of children. Was I dreaming? This couldn't be real. We're all seeing the same thing, Leo said quietly. Why are they just standing there? I asked. Maybe they're afraid of the fire, Paul guessed. Did you call for help? I asked hopefully. Our phones are dead, Leo replied, ashamed. Great. You came out here with 10 battery, I snapped. These two idiots had taken turns playing music on their phones all day, draining them completely. And I, brilliant, had taken my phone and Max's and thrown them in the glove compartment to avoid distractions. Why'd you leave yours in the car? Paul scolded. There's a child asleep in that tent, I reminded them. We need to think about what to do. We keep the fire going. Stay put. Wait for morning, Paul said, tossing a thin stick into the flames. There wasn't much wood left. A whole night stretched ahead. My husband and I sat down by the fire. He took my hand, meant to comfort me, but it just made me angrier. They dragged us into God knows what, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by whatever those things were. Why are they staring at us? I asked. Maybe they're just curious, Leo offered weakly. I wanted to believe that, We sat there for what felt like an hour and a half, not daring to look away from the flames. The fire was now mostly embers, flickering weakly. Then, suddenly, Paul tossed his hoodie into the fire. "What are you doing?" I asked, shocked. "What else can I do? We're out of firewood," he shrugged. He started tearing up dry grass and throwing in whatever else he could grab. Blankets, garbage, eventually, even a tent. Each time the fire flared up, I could see the slick, wet figures circling us closer than before. The smoke stung my eyes. My mouth was dry. I was almost sure they'd moved closer. Paul had been right. They weren't people. I caught a glimpse of a face in the firelight, swollen purplish, like a corpse. The eyes were milky white. All I could think about was Max. I watched the tent. The creatures were still keeping their distance, but I didn't want him to see any of this. Paul stripped off his shirt and threw it into the fire. "Come on, start undressing. We need fuel." "Don't talk nonsense," Leo argued. "Clothes burn for 3 seconds. If it rains, we're screwed." My brother-in-law rubbed his bare shoulders, trying to keep warm. "We need to find more wood," Leo said. "I saw some old boards over there earlier." "How are you going to get to them?" Paul asked. "Like this," Leo said, pulling a still glowing stick from the fire. "You and I go. I scare them off with the torch. You grab the wood and run back. Got it?" Before I could object, they were already moving. My husband held the burning stick like a torch. "Laura, don't argue. We need to survive." They stepped into the darkness, and the figures instantly began to move. "Back off," Leo shouted, waving the torch wildly. The slick creatures surged toward them like a wave. "Stop swinging it so hard." Paul yelled too late. Leo swung too wide, and the torch went out. Worst of all, the things made no sound. They silently swarmed the two men. The brothers screamed. "Leo!" I shouted. I couldn't see anything clearly, just writhing, wet shapes in the dark. My husband let out a terrible cry. Paul broke free from the mass and collapsed right at the edge of the firelight. He couldn't move. I ran to him, dragging him closer to the fire with all my strength. Behind me, the tent unzipped. "Mama, what's going on?" Max asked, rubbing his eyes. "Quiet, sweetheart," I said, rushing to him. He saw the creatures and froze. "What are those things?" he asked, terrified. "Don't ask, just sit." "Look at the fire," I said, pulling him down beside it. Then I ran back to Paul. He was breathing hard, staring at the dark sky. His whole body was coated in slimy, stinking goo. "Where's Dad?" Max asked. "I said be quiet," I snapped, eyes on the shadows. The slippery creatures had formed a ring again, standing motionless as if nothing had happened. I gently slapped Paul's cheeks. "Where's Leo?" "They dragged him into the river," he whispered. "I think my arms are broken." I had never felt fear like this before. The fire was almost out. I threw in whatever we had left. "Mama, why are you burning everything?" Max asked. "Don't ask questions," I said flatly. Even the last tent went into the flames. It lasted maybe 40 more minutes. Max coughed from the smoke, but didn't complain. He understood this wasn't just camping anymore. "They're leaving," Pasha said suddenly. I looked around. The slick figures were slowly returning to the river, one by one. They must have sensed the sunrise. The sky had begun to lighten. As the last one disappeared beneath the water, I shouted, "Get in the car, now!" "But you don't know how to drive," Max said. "Do what I say." I still had a sliver of hope we could save Leo. No license, but I'd tried driving once. It didn't seem so hard. Pasha collapsed into the back seat. Max sat beside me up front. I started the engine and turned the car around in the clearing. That's when Max screamed, "Mama, Dad!" "There, in the river." "Where?" I cried. "In the water." "Is he dead?" Max's eyes filled with tears. The headlights glinted off the river's surface. There, floating face down, was my husband, the father of my child. "He's dead, Mama," Max whispered through sobs. I spun the wheel, slammed the gas, and we sped off. Everything after that is a blur. Eventually, emergency services arrived. Medics rushed to help Pasha. Max was crying. I don't even remember what I told the people in uniform. "You were camping by Willow Bend?" one of them said. "Are you out of your minds?" "What's even going on there?" Paul asked. "Nothing now," a rescuer replied. "But a few years ago, the local factory was dumping unknown chemicals into the river. For 3 years, whole tankers of it. Half the management ended up in prison. There are dams on both ends of that river. You'd be safer camping in Chernobyl. You know how many people have gone missing there? Not even bodies found. It's like they just vanished." "They didn't vanish," Pasha muttered quietly. "I never saw my husband again, neither alive nor dead. Maybe now he's one of them."